Welcome to the Teaching Journeys podcast, hosted by Dave Roberts. Humanity possesses a unique skill, the ability to pass knowledge from one generation to the next. This podcast embraces that ability, offering learning opportunities through conversations with extraordinary guests. Dave aims to leave a positive mark on individuals around the world. So before you dive into today's episode, please share this podcast with your network, including friends, family, and colleagues. And please consider leaving a rating or review. Your support makes all the difference.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Teaching Journeys podcast. I'm your host, Dave Roberts, and today it is my pleasure to have as my guest Dr. Winifred Bragg. Dr. Bragg is a double board-certified physician, CEO, and 5-time best-selling author. She is the creator of the Bragg Factor, a leadership framework that helps high-achieving professionals and emerging leaders own their value, amplify their voice, and achieve their highest potential, personally and professionally. Drawing from the science of pain and performance, Dr. Bragg helps leaders turn professional pain into clarity, confidence, and meaningful impact. Dr. Bragg, welcome to the Teaching Journeys podcast. It is my absolute pleasure to have you on the program today.
Well, it's my pleasure to be with you, Dave. Thanks for having me as well.
You're welcome. And we have to give props to Steve Ramona. Steve is one of the podcast industry's extraordinary matchmakers. He introduced us, thought there would be alignment for a podcast episode. And, one introductory call later, we found that there definitely was alignment. And here we are today recording an episode.
Yes, thanks to Steve.
Absolutely. Dr. Bragg, my first question for you is, please tell our listeners about the experiences that have shaped your current life path and your life passions today.
Well, I am a physician interventional pain doctor, but I also, as you said, help high achievers to reach their goals. And so what has shaped my life is that when I was treating people with physical pain, oftentimes I would have patients who were high achievers or emerging leaders. And I noticed that they would be suffering from burnout, feeling undervalued and overlooked. And a lot of times that would impact how they would respond in their pain because they were having stress. And so I readily learned that there was an intersection between what I call professional pain, when you suffer from burnout, stress, feeling undervalued, and physical pain. And that pain is pain. And so that kind of shaped my way that I treated people and how I ended up coaching high achievers and emerging leaders.
Yeah, that sounds like an interesting path, because during our introductory call, we discussed your background as an interventional pain specialist. What are the services that you provide different from traditional medication-based interventions for pain management?
Well, intervention just means I also do some procedures like epidurals and certain type of intraspinal injections for people who have pain. I give them medication. But because of the Bragg factor, I also try to look at the patterns that people have suffered from pain. And I try to focus on helping them to understand their value and understand a pain loop, the stress that's involved in increasing pain. There's something we call the pain loop, that whether you're dealing with professional pain or you're dealing with physical pain, because when pain goes up, your stress goes up. And when your stress goes up, sleep goes down. And anybody that's suffered from burnout or any of those sequelae know that it comes from feeling stressed and having lack of sleep. And so that intersection has helped me to be able to treat people from a different standpoint, because I put that into their treatment process as well, when it's appropriate.
It makes sense. And, the cycle of stress, and I know extreme stress really releases cortisol, which does a lot of, funky things to our nervous system and our bodily functions and sleep. So basically, it sounds like there's a whole mind-body connection that goes along with the experience of pain. Am I correct in assuming that?
You are correct. There's a whole lot that goes with the body-mind connection with pain, because, we feel the pain in our body, but we get signals in the brain that amplifies it. And so we have to have control over turning that signal down by turning down the stress level and letting our brain know that, hey, I have this pain, but it's okay. And so what I try to tell people, especially high achievers who are so stressed, that try in the middle of the day to do what I call a gratitude reset. And that's where you may take a moment during lunch or whatever and say, let me just take time, push away from my job and see, can I do a little meditation and go to a place where I felt grateful about something? It may be when you were married, started a business, got a promotion, but close your eyes and do some breathing and get yourself really calm so that you can turn down that amplification of your pain signal.
So it's basically just making a conscious effort to take just a little time with yourself to reset, to get in, to go within, reflect on how you want your day to go. And essentially, that type of meditative effect is something that's important as far as, I would imagine, pain management. Have you found that those type of practices have helped individuals effectively manage pain, Dr. Bragg?
I have found that it helps people manage physical pain as well as what I call professional pain from high achievers having that, worried about deadlines, worried about reports, worried about what am I going to do tomorrow, that it helps both sets of people effectively.
Yeah, what causes the professional pain besides the deadlines? Are there anything that, working with high achievers, have you found that there's anything in their mindset, in their belief system that tells them that they constantly have to keep up with the Joneses, that their self-esteem is going to be totally compromised if they aren't high achievers? What type of beliefs have you found that they subscribe to that have contributed to perhaps their inability to manage pain or contributed to the intensification of pain?
Well, what I found out, and it's surprising that in the same place in the brain where we have pain signals, it's the same place of the brain where people have low value and low self-esteem. That sometimes high achievers may be a person that you say, how could they not feel good about themselves? How could they not own their value and know how to communicate their value? A lot of high achievers that I work with are people who achieve things, but they still feel like they're overlooked and undervalued. And that leads to a lot of stress. And it leads to imposter syndrome, not feeling good about themselves. And that leads to a cycle for them. And yet you say, wow, you've accomplished so much. But inside them, they don't understand their value or they don't want to sound arrogant when they're talking about it. So they never really learn how in an audience to say what is good about themselves because they worry what people think I'm arrogant. So they don't brag.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's one of the things I think society ingrains is that, you can be humble, but yet you can still celebrate your achievements. And I think you can find a balance with that.
You can. In my home, my last name is Bragg. And so my dad always taught us, if you don't brag on yourself, no one else is going to do it. But society teaches us, don't brag on yourself.
Yep. Yep.
And it's good to celebrate yourself, especially, how achievers accomplish so much. I tell them to keep a journal and write down at the end of the day, the end of the month, some of the things that you accomplished and not always worry about what's happening tomorrow.
Absolutely. Try to stay in the moment and be grateful for the achievements that you've made at a particular day as opposed to projecting what you need to do in the future.
That's right.
Yeah, because I would imagine that would cause a lot of professional pain because I think as long as we keep looking to the future about what we need to accomplish, we can't be totally happy with what we've accomplished in the present. And we may never be totally happy if we keep looking and comparing our present accomplishments to what we need to accomplish in the future.
That's right. You just won't be happy. That happened to me recently. I was seeing patients in the office and the internet went down. Well, back in the old days, we had charts anyway. We didn't have charts on the internet. But when it went down, I'm like, how in the world am I going to make it without these electronic charts? Then I was also worried because I was going to be on a podcast that day. How was I going to do that? And while I was worrying about that, guess what? I called the IT guy and he came and took care of that in minutes. So there I was worrying about what was going to happen at 4:00. When 4:00 came, the problem was resolved. And so we don't need to just create worry. Take time And like you said, live for the now. Because what we know is, you know how many years worry takes off of your life? 7 years.
Wow.
People who worry lose about 7 years of life just from worrying.
Wow. Yeah. I think the DSM-5 has a disorder, for lack of a better way to put this, called generalized anxiety disorder, which is characterized
Wow.
by just excessive worry about things that typically are out of our control, things that never happen anyway. So,
That's
but
right.
yet worrying is a big part of that and contributes to our anxiety and also contributes to that professional pain that you were talking about.
That's right. And then really, how many times did your worrying really help you?
I can tell you, Dr. Bragg, none.
None. It didn't help you. It just created another problem because then you got anxiety over it, lost sleep, and became overly stressed. And so it really does not help us to just worry.
The sleep management piece. Do individuals who come to see you, do they request assistance with managing their sleep or sleeping better or sleeping well or getting restorative sleep? And if they do, what strategies do you teach them to really have restorative sleep? And how does that relate to effective pain management?
Well, it has a big relationship because, we all should be really getting about 7 to 9 hours a day. And how often do we not really do that? Because
Yeah.
we stand up with families or worrying or working or whatever we're doing. I'm not a sleep specialist, but sleep has a great impact on that pain loop, how it goes together that when you don't have sleep. And so what I tell people is if you only been getting 4 or 5 hours, let's focus on saying, can we work this month on increasing it by 30 minutes and taking that 30-minute interval? Or maybe do something at the end of the day before you go to bed that you like. Is it reading a book? Is it listening to music? Something to help you wind down. And so people that lack sleep do seem to suffer more from chronic pain than people who get restorative sleep. I tell them it's awful to think that you are having all this overwhelming pain when you have control over it by simply getting some restorative sleep. You're searching procedures, want to know if there's a new procedure that can help you when you have the control. And that's one of the things I try to teach people is that you are the thermostat of your life, and you want to set that thermostat so the temperature in your life, the pain, is controlled by you as much as you can. Certainly, there are external factors that you can't do, but the things you can do, like sleep, is fundamental, and you need to work on that.
Yeah, and I think the older I get, I can only sleep a certain number of hours. So I try to focus on getting hours of consecutive sleep. And I've learned to do that. But,
Mhm.
the days of me sleeping 10, 12 hours, like I did when I was younger, is pretty much over. So, I have to learn to go to bed at a specific time and try to sleep a specific amount of time. And even just in bed, just kind of rest a little bit. Even, if I've like slept for 5 hours and I need to get six, I'll lay in bed for an hour and lay still. So,
Right.
just to get that 6 hours in.
I never have had a problem with the beauty of sleep, so I can't relate to that personally. My thing is to try to make sure I get enough sleep because I'm one that really used to go on fewer hours of what we need to
Mhm.
have. But as we get older, that's not good for your heart. It's just not good from my Alzheimer's standpoint. All these things are related to sleep. And so I don't want to think that I'm having a heart condition,
Yeah.
arrhythmia, other heart conditions, simply because I'm not sleeping. So I am now put myself on a regimen where I try to get my 7 hours. I know the goal is to get 7 to 9. So that's what I'm doing because I'm on the other end. Not that I have a problem sleeping. It's just that I was always doing something,
Yep.
reading a book, working on a project. So I set deadlines for that so that my mind can rest and not be thinking about those things.
Just to shift focus for a second, Dr. Bragg, one of the things we talked about was you making the transition from medicine to coaching. What
Uh-huh.
inspired you to want to do that? What inspired you to want to go to that to the coaching practice?
Well, I was treating patients with pain as I do now. And so many people were coming in, high achievers, who looked like they were successful on the outside, but who were so exhausted. I would treat people who have work-related injuries, and maybe they hurt their back, and they weren't able to go back to that job because they had to participate in prolonged standing or lifting. I started talking to people about the details of their careers and their details of their job, and learned about their transferable skills. And doing that, I had to learn to teach them that the job is what they do.
Yep.
It is not who you are.
Yep.
And I saw that pattern over and over, and that helped me or shifted me to start doing coaching. So I had people who were pharmacists, and maybe they hurt their back, so they couldn't work at a retail pharmacy any longer. And they lost their value because it was a good paying job. But when we looked at what they had to do as a pharmacist, they could be a consultant. I recently saw a guy who was a chef, hurt his back, he was doing heavy lifting, but he had been a chef some 20 years. So I told him that you have the skills to manage other people. So
Yes.
he ended after hurting his back, he's happy now. He has a job, he's a director of operations for the whole dining department. And so I just saw a pattern of people who were exhausted and not seeing their value and knowing how to transfer their value and do a pivot shift. And that's what helped me to be able to get into the coaching and let people know that so many people don't understand their value and how to own it and then how to articulate it. Because if you articulate it right, you usually get paid more or get a
Yes.
promotion when you articulate it right. But
Yes.
nobody comes by your desk and says, "Hey, Dave, let me give you a raise."
Yeah, as much as we'd like to think that happens, or as much as we'd like to have that happen, it doesn't happen.
It doesn't happen.
And they're not going to do that out of the goodness of of your heart. But the thing I think we get so myopic in our vision is that we are defined by one job that we do. Let's say I was defined as my job as an addictions counselor.
Right.
And I came to see you, and I was kind of disillusioned with the organizational mission, with the agency's mission, and it was just totally impacting all areas of my life. One of the things that when we're in that role, it's also what I think it's good to have a coach is that coach can say, look, you have specific skills in this area that can translate to something else, like the cook who hurt his back, but now became the director of operations. He's teaching everybody else how to cook. So he's imparting that wisdom, and that's impacting the organizational mission, the philosophy, and the quality of services. He's just not cooking anymore.
He's just not cooking. And I told him just because at my home, I'm the one who does the Thanksgiving turkey. And people would complain sometimes that it was dry. And so he was my patient. I said, "Hey, so tell me, how to make it a little moist." So now every Thanksgiving over the last couple of years is a very moist turkey. And I got that from him. I said, just like you taught me, you could be the director and teach that to other people. And I'm bragging. I get bragged on about that turkey, but it's because of you. Not the package of the directions on that turkey. It was you.
Yeah. It was your specific influence. It was your specific teaching.
Right, your teaching. And he had teaching skills that he had not recognized. But with your breadth of knowledge, all you have to pivot shift and you can teach the others. And you are not lifting the heavy turkeys. They are.
That's right. Specifically as a coach, Dr. Bragg, what type of services do you provide? And I know you get high functioning professionals, but what are the services? I know the Bragg factor, which we're going to talk about in a bit, but what are those specific services that you provide to individuals who request your services?
Well, some people come for executive coaching. They want to improve their executive presence. Some people want to learn what I call how to do a 30-second brag. How do they say something about themselves that's empowering in 30 seconds? Because people don't want to hear when they say, what do you do? They don't have 5 or 10 minutes to learn about you. And how do you say it so that it's conversational and that it's memorable so that they want to engage you later? So a lot of people come, and you'll be surprised the number of executives that come to me because they want to learn their 30-second brag. I've written a best-selling book on dreams without goals or nightmares. Some come so that they can learn, how do you reach your goals? What are the things that I can do to reach them more quickly? And how do I get into that? And so I teach them about 4 questions that I do whenever I'm starting a business or working on a goal. I teach them the 4 questions that I ask about each goal that I'm doing. And one of the questions is, what's holding you back? And that's where the work is done. So in the coaching, we get down, what do you want? When do you want it? But most importantly, what's holding you back? Because that's the work. When you can figure out what's holding you back, then we can usually reach our goals.
What do you find are the typical conditions, things that hold people back from reaching their goals?
You know, people say that we are the sum total of the 5 people we spend the most time with in our circle. So sometimes I hate to tell you, it is the circle that you're keeping. And you have to be like a plant. If that leaf isn't growing, you need to prune it because it's taking energy from the plant growing. Sometimes we have to look at our circle and say, every time I have an idea and I share it with Dave, he finds a way to shrink my idea. But if I go to Susan, she stretches it. So why don't I choose 5 people like Susan rather than 5 people like Dave who are going to stretch my ideas? I have a best friend of mine who's a CPA, and she always tells me about the bad experiences she had with doctors and whatever. But over time, she's got me to grow and be to stretch things because she'll give me critical analysis of doctor-patient relationships and coaching relationships with clients. And so I think it is the 5 people that you're spending the most time with that's shaping you. But sometimes we don't grow because our goals are too small.
Yeah.
I always say in research, there's something you can reach by yourself with no help. The goal is probably too small.
Yeah, it makes sense. Because to reach the goals that we want in our lives, whether it's personal or professional, we need community. We need the help of family. We need the help of friends and the outside community in general that are going to support us.
We need some connection.
Yeah.
So we need to know, and we don't want to pick a circle where we are the smartest person in it. If you're the smartest person in that circle, you need another circle as well. You don't want to be the smartest person, but you don't want to be the least. You want to be somebody that also can give something back to other people so that it's a mutually beneficial relationship. Now, I'm not here to have people to say to get rid of your best friend, to get rid of your spouse, or to get rid of whatever, but you do need to analyze your circle.
Yes. Yeah. And I think one of the things I've discovered in my own life, Dr. Bragg, is the people who are in my circle at one point in my life are not in my circle at another point in my life because as my needs change, as my priorities change, or as their needs and priorities change, that support circle is going to look different. Yet there's so many times that people will blame themselves for their support circle changing. It's like, well, what did I do to make that person leave? Well, you didn't do anything. It's just your needs changed, their needs changed, and the support that they were getting from you or vice versa was no longer meeting those needs. So they went someplace else, which is
That's right.
our God-given right to do that.
That's right. And you don't have to feel badly. You don't have to be mean about it. You need change. That we only have so much time in a day, a week, or a month. That's not going to change. And you want it to be meaningful. Because the older that you get, you realize how important each day is. And so you realize that, and you need it to be meaningful time that you're spending in your relationship.
Absolutely. And it's your job too. I tell my students all the time, walk away from people or organizations or situations that don't see your value or that aren't feeding your soul anymore. If you have the option to do something that's going to make you happy, do it. Don't stay in a situation because you feel you need to. That's going to continue to make you unhappy.
That's right.
So you've been talking about the brag factor. So
Yes.
we got to get into that. What is the brag factor and how does that inform your coaching philosophy?
Well, the brag factor obviously comes from my name, BRAGG, and it's a framework that's based on that. And what it came from, when I was in college, the University of Alabama, at 18, 19 years old, I found myself in a chemistry class where a teacher always called on me. And there was like 400 people in this class. And man, he called me and I just didn't know the answer. And sometimes I did, but I was so frightened, intimidated to speak in front of those 400 people that I couldn't get the answer out. And after going back and forth, I knew I had to have chemistry in order to reach my goals. My mother said to me, "You don't let this man keep you from reaching your goals." And so I always say, looking back on it, I certainly didn't know it then, that was when I discovered my brag factor. Because I had to learn how to do what B stands for, behave as if. When he asked me a question, I had to learn to behave as if I knew the answer, even if I didn't. And when I started saying it with confidence and like I wasn't intimidated, he left me alone. But as long as I was that shaky, frustrated freshman there for about 2 months in the semester, he was calling on me every day. And one day my mother told me that you got to nip this in the bud. And I decided then that I was just going to behave as if, fake it till I made it. And so I tell people that first thing in the brag factor, behave as if. Regardless of what you want to do in life, you're talking to your students or whoever you're talking to, you want to go from entry-level employee to a manager, start behaving like that person does. And that's going to help you to start taking those appropriate actions to model them and move toward what you want to do. So behave as if. The second thing in the brag factor is R, resist the urge to quit or complain. Back in college also, I was taking tennis. A good-looking guy told me, you don't need all this chemistry and biology. You need to balance that with taking tennis and get an easy A. Listen, Dave, I had never held a tennis ball or a tennis racket. I got in that class, and the only reason you get an easy A, those other people were junior high and high school champions in tennis. So they were serving the ball at 90, 95 miles per hour. Let me tell you, tennis was the hardest B I ever made in my life. But I had to get out of that class with a decent grade. And so I stayed in there. And the only way I made a B, I made 100 on the written exam, coupled with that 60 on technique. I was able to get an 80 B. And my dad said, now don't let that good looking man tell you to take bowling or anything else. But so I tell people, you have to resist the urge to quit and complain. A stands for accept no limitation. G stands for grow your gift. Often people ask me, well, how do you know your gift? Back to that circle with your friends, you learn what your gift will be because oftentimes, what are people coming to you all the time? You know, I had someone who lost their job and they're like, what am I going to do? They said, what else can I do? I said, well, what do your friends ask you to do all the time? They may ask you to organize things or put colors together because you're good with coordinating colors. A client of mine now has a business where she does organizing. She organizes people's closets. And how many people need a closet straightened out? Because people, her friends would tell her, come on over and help me clean out this closet. I said, that's a gift. You in this other deadbeat job making $15 an hour, people pay a lot of money for closets to organize. So she became an organizer, organizing closets. So grow your gift. And you may make a pivot shift, and that could be a new vocation for you. And the last G stands for gratitude. Because I think regardless of who you are, where you are, if you can live from a state of gratitude, you live better. We know that people who show gratitude are healthier, happier, and more successful, and they do live longer. And so gratitude is what the brag factor is, the foundation of it all.
Yeah, and there's so many times, Dr. Bragg, that we get so caught up in the day-to-day that we forget to express gratitude. I mean, even in the worst possible day of our lives, whether it's at work, whether it's at home, we can still find one thing to be grateful for, even if it's that person who held the door open for us, somebody that we didn't know smiled at us. You know, we found out that we got a little extra money in our paycheck that we weren't expecting, or we heard from a friend who hadn't called us. We hadn't talked to them like 2 or 3 months, and all of a sudden, out of the blue, they call. But we tend to lose sight of the fact that even in the worst day, we can find 1 or 2 things to be grateful for that don't make that day look so bad after all.
And that's why I think it's important, and I mentioned earlier, to take a gratitude reset. Just 60 seconds a day to just reflect upon something that you were grateful for. And as you say, to take time to express gratitude. You know, if you're a manager, we have to sometimes give criticism to our staff, but take time to also Tell them what you're grateful for and what they did well, because you're going to reap the benefits, because everyone likes a compliment and to know that they are appreciated. And taking just that little time does a lot for everyone.
Yeah, and even if they were working on a situation that didn't have a positive outcome, but was a very challenging situation, and they did a great job just trying to negotiate a positive outcome based on some very adverse circumstances, you still go out of your way to say, look, given the kind of cards you were dealt, you did a great job with this. Don't let the outcome reflect on your personal competence, because it was a situation that was really, really difficult, very challenging, and I think you handled it very well. Sit down with that person, say, let's take a look at some of the positives that came out of this for you professionally. Let's see how we can use what came out of that for you moving forward for your continued professional growth. I think even with any bad situation, there's always something good that you can take from it if you frame it that way.
And you know what you said was just wonderful, because Austin and I had to learn it early on too. And sometimes I would start out saying something grateful and then say, but you did that. You don't need to make that but negative in there. Keep it all positive and don't say mention the but it could have been that. Just stay on the positive, and that gives you better benefit from them understanding what you said the positives were with you for the outcome.
Yeah, in the professional world, that helps build really good relationships, whether it's collegial relationships or supervisor-supervisee relationship, by always emphasizing the positive.
It,
So,
that's right. I try to, if we are crowded in the office, and I try to tell my staff, you did a wonderful job of getting all those patients in on a good time. I have to meet with Dave today at 10. They made sure my schedule was right so that I could be on time, and they had to do that. They keep my schedule, and so I tell them before I came to talk to you today how much I appreciated them scheduling people appropriately so that they could be taken care of and I could get to you on time. And so they appreciate that. And they say, you can keep me as long as you want to because I've given them a break while I'm with you.
that's that's right. So if I don't let you out on it at the appropriate time, or I don't keep you for the time that I'm going to hear from them probably.
That's right. They're going to say, why did you keep her longer?
I don't. Well, yeah, you can give them my email, give them my phone number, and I'll be more than happy to take the complaints.
Okay.
But the thing is that that's also a valid point that you make too, is that leaders are only as good as the well-trained staff that they have around them. And
That's right.
how you treat your staff is going to come back to you, because they're twofold, because they're going to be covering your back. You're going to make sure they got your back because they know you got theirs, and they know that you appreciate them.
That's right. And when you do that, they're going to work harder for you and they're going to really care about you as an individual, not just the boss who came in. They're going to work harder for you when they know that you really are interested in their growth, you care about them, and you show them that you appreciate them.
Absolutely. And I know you do a lot of seminars, workshops for high achievers, emerging leaders. And I got this quote actually from you in our conversations, because physical pain and professional pain follow the same stress patterns. Understanding how pain works allows leaders to break burnout cycles, regain clarity, and lead with confidence. What are the similarities in stress patterns that physical pain and professional pain follow? And just elaborate more in general on that statement that I just read to you.
Well, what I learned is pain is pain. Let's say you hurt your back.
Yeah.
When people hurt their back, they don't want to move. And one of the reasons we send them to physical therapy is the physical therapist is going to what? Tell you stretch your back so that the muscles don't tighten up. When you have professional pain or something in your relationships, you're having pain, what? You don't want to move. You feel stuck in your career. And you say, I don't know what to do. I don't want to move. I want a new job, but will I get a better one? So you feel stuck. So it's not until whether you have physical pain or professional pain that we sometimes step out of that comfort zone that you can stretch and move forward. Whether your back hurts or you're stuck in your career, you want to be in your comfort zone. But I say you have to work through your discomfort zone.
Yep.
You got to work through that discomfort zone, whether it's physical pain, stretching, or it's professional pain that you're trying to stretch to reach a goal. whether it's your profession or in your personal life. And when you feel more stressed, we get scared and we have fear can come in, whether you're dealing with moving. Oh, I don't want to move. Oh, I'm scared it's going to make my back hurt. Or you're moving through your career or professional zone, fear comes in. And that's how all of them work together. But I try to emphasize the importance of stepping through that discomfort zone and how do we work through it so that we can stretch. And when
Yeah.
we stretch and step out, we can usually get rid of the physical pain and we can get rid of how we feel stuck in our careers.
Yeah. And I can see where, a lot of times the psychological factors, particularly being stuck in a job that we're not happy with, all of that can contribute to physical pain.
Right.
And particularly if those emotions are getting repressed, it can contribute to stomach problems, heart problems, high blood pressure. It's like emotions or feelings that have no place to go or to be expressed get turned inward. And there's that cycle of mind, body in terms of how it relates to stress, physical pain, psychological pain, professional pain.
That's right. Because even when expressing gratitude, we know gratitude lowers blood pressure, decreases depression and stress, and all of those things. It increases your immunity as well. So as you said, all those emotional pains, that all that contribute to your professional pain, your physical pain, your stomach hurts because you're stressed, you feel queasy, all of that goes together. And then
Yeah.
you're staying up late at night and can't sleep.
Yeah. I mean, it's just your body is just out of whack.
You just worn out and exhausted.
Yeah.
And you just get into what I call your discomfort zone. And that's what, but we don't have to be, my grandmother used to always say, oh, when you went through that, look what character you have. Well, sometimes we say we have enough character now. We don't need to go through any other adversities. But when we look back at it, our challenges and adversities that we have in life, once we make it through it, we can see how we were strengthened from it. We were kind of in the weight room. We had to lift that weight. But when we lifted it, what happened? We got stronger. When
That's right.
people want to grow muscles, they have to do repetitive lifting
Yep.
and they get strength and they get stronger. And so the same thing in our professional life as well. When you go through those challenges, just know you're lifting a weight, but it's going to make you stronger at the other end. And it doesn't happen instantly, just like lifting a weight to increase your muscle strength. The more we use it, the stronger it's going to become.
Yeah, it makes sense. Like with that, the more we use our brain muscles, the more we use our physical muscles, we learn to train those differently with either different information or different physical exercises, training those muscles, the same muscles differently. I think it gives us just a lot more variety, a lot more depth, and a lot more stamina down the road.
Right. It's kind of like when Roger Bannister, I think it was 1954, where he wanted to break the 4-minute mile. The reason he was able to do that, not just because of the physical training, but the way he trained his mind with certainty that he would reach that goal. And so we know that you can train your brain through what we call the reticular activating system, which acts just like a filter. When we wake up in the morning, we have 90,000 thoughts. And most of those thoughts could be negative. But how do we move through getting out of those negative thoughts? You got to pour in a lot of good water, clean water, to get rid of all that negativity. And that's by training your reticular activating system. And so he trained his mind with certainty that he would reach that goal, and he did. Because at the end of the day, our subconscious mind and our brain wants to do what we tell it to do. So what are we telling it? Can we reach our goals or can we not reach our goal? When I wrote my book, I read that millionaires and billionaires got up each morning, a lot of them, and they would close their eyes and they visualized themselves reaching that goal for the day. I'm going to close that deal. I'm going to make those sales. So if you're someone who feels insecure about owning your value or giving someone a good point at the job, when you know, I could have told the boss about that. I had thought about that strategy. Visualize yourself going to the meeting doing it. And if you keep doing that, one day you will be able to do it because you're training your mind.
Yeah. It's about intention. It's also about putting affirmations in there that are counterintuitive to the negative messages that you've told yourself that have prevented you from achieving your goals and have contributed to both your physical pain and your professional pain. So tell our audience about your book. You've mentioned your book, Dreams Without Goals Are Nightmares. So what do you want readers to take away from it? What is it about?
Well, what I want you to know that there's a structure to reaching your goals. If you really ask yourself the 4 questions that I researched and talked about, that you can reach your goals in a faster way, but you want to have a structure. And there is value in writing them down and maybe sharing it with someone and saying it out loud. Because when you do that, the likelihood of you reaching your goal is increased. So start sharing it, because someone may be able to just tweak it a little bit, stretch it a little bit, and take the idea that you had and had it to grow. And that's what I want them to know, to think about what's holding you back. And then just be real with what's holding you back. And just don't worry so much about the strategy of how you're going to do it. Because what I've learned is when you get convicted on why you want it and when you want it, those things will propel you to figure out the how. Because if we had to wait on the how all the time, we'll never attack our goals. But we want to think about the why and the when and the what.
I like that. And particularly if you write your goals down and you make them public, you tell somebody that you trust, a community that you're a part of, a group that you're a part of, you make those goals public, you're going to be more likely to achieve them because one, you've stated your intention to some close friends or relatives, or perhaps even to the universe, if you want to take a look at it a little bit more broadly. And, the second thing is that you have that support built in when you feel like there's days where you're not going to achieve your goal or you don't have the energy to achieve your goal. So I think that your book sounds like it has some really, really good practical wisdom. So, if you could leave our listeners with one thing today, one ultimate takeaway, Dr. Bragg, and you've left our audience with a lot today, but what would be the one ultimate takeaway that you would leave our audience with today?
Is that I encourage all of you to find your Bragg factor. There's something that's unique about you that nobody else has. That when you find that, own it and learn how to articulate it, then you can reach your goals. And when you realize you're good enough and how to tell others you're good enough and start believing you're good enough, that's the first step. And then you can reach your goals.
That sounds like some very great advice, very sage wisdom. So thank you for that, Dr. Bragg. My last question for you, I could probably talk to you for about another hour or so, but I know you've got to get on with the rest of your day and you got some stuff to wrap up with your practice, but my last question is going to give you an opportunity to promote yourself a little bit. How can people get in touch with you, contract for your services, purchase your books? What's the best way for them to do that?
If they go to my website, thebraggfactor.com, they can learn all about me, and I invite them to come to my monthly coaching program, which is on the second Thursday of every month at 12:30 Eastern. It's virtual, and you can go to the website and look up the Bragg Factor Next Level. It's a network where I do a virtual coaching for about 45 minutes, and people will be able to ask me questions. I think that would be a good way to learn about me. You can also go to my website, and I have free resources there that you can get under the resource tab under the navigation bar.
I will make sure all of your contact information gets into the episode notes when our podcast episode goes live. Dr. Bragg, thank you so much today for a very enlightening and wonderful conversation. I enjoyed spending time with you today, and I hope we can do this again sometime.
I hope so too, Dave, and I wish you well as well.
Thank you, Dr. Bragg. And with that, that's a wrap on another episode of the Teaching Journeys podcast. I'm your host, Dave Roberts, wishing you peace.